Hello and welcome to Zenatta's monthly webinar series. This month we're going to be covering Zoho DataPrep, which is a tool that allows you to do a handful of different data cleansing and data integration steps quickly and easily. So my name is Tyler Koltz, and before I jump into the walkthrough, I do want to ask, if you find this video useful, please be sure to like and subscribe down below, as that really does help us out. If it sparks any questions, feedback, or video requests, please leave those in the comment section down below, as we do try to read through each and every one of those on a weekly basis. So before we jump in, I just want to do a quick word from our sponsor.
Junk data can clog up your CRM, making it harder to focus on the records that matter. Next thing you know, you've got a mountain of records to sort through, and you're not even sure where to start. This is why we created the Zenatta Health Check for Zoho CRM. This extension reads your Zoho CRM's users, leads, deals, accounts, contacts, and tasks data and provides you with a monthly summary straight to your inbox of some of the key indicators of data quality for these core modules. With the Zenatta Health Check, you'll get notified in your monthly report whether or not you have unused Zoho CRM licenses, or if you have contacts missing email addresses, or accounts with no associated contacts. In addition, you'll get links to helpful videos and blogs from the Zenatta resource library showing you how you can clean up your system and keep it clean. We also include buttons on each of the core modules that let you generate your health check report whenever you need it. The Zenatta Health Check for Zoho CRM. A clean system is a better system. Download today on the Zoho Marketplace.
And that sponsor is us. Zenatta is sponsoring our own video. I don't know if you really need to say it that way. Just want to do a quick plug. We have a health check plugin over on the CRM Marketplace. This is just a quick little tool that you can install that will read through your CRM and shoot you over regular updates on any potential data quality issues that you may have. Whether that's records without emails, duplicates, open deals past a closing date, right? Just kind of a slew of a lot of the normal things that we see go wrong inside of CRM installs. This thing does have a 7-day free trial, and then it's just $10 a month. Set it and forget it and get all that info delivered right to your inbox on a weekly basis. So with that plug over, let us jump into talking a little bit about some of the normal use cases for Zoho DataPrep. Alrighty, so as a quick precursor before we actually jump into the app itself, I wanted to give just a super high-level overview of a few of the main ways that we'll see this app be used. I'm here inside of Vani HQ. If you haven't checked this out, it's Zoho's Lucid Chart equivalent. Actually pretty good, but I built out just a couple quick flows that we can go through before we do the walkthrough. So one of the use cases here for Zoho DataPrep is what we would kind of refer to as ad hoc data cleansing, right? So this is where maybe you get a messy data set and you wanted to clean it up, right? So you can take that data set, drop it into DataPrep, run a variety of different rules and expressions on it, and then export back out a clean data set, which you can use however you'd like, right? So maybe this is like a lead list that you get from a trade show. Maybe this is a commission sheet that you get from an insurance provider, right? That you need to kind of clean up before you work with. Zoho DataPrep can basically take in a CSV or an Excel file and give you back a CSV or Excel file that just has all of your cleanup activities applied to it. Another big use case for DataPrep that we see pretty often is essentially serving as what we would call part of a data pipeline, right? So this is where we have one or multiple different data sets that we want to end up exporting into a Zoho app, but maybe they don't fit our formatting, right? A really common one is like maybe you get a list of leads and the addresses in those leads are all inside of one column, right? Well, as you know, in CRM, it's going to want those addresses to be split up. So you might push it through a pipeline using DataPrep that would split those out for you before sending them over to a Zoho application. This kind of works the same with third-party app data, right? So maybe you have a marketing tool, maybe you have an old CRM and you're migrating, maybe you have an accounting tool, lots of different ways you can connect in, but you can essentially point multiple different data sources into DataPrep, do any of that cleanup, even do some like joins and combines of the data, and then export all of that into a Zoho app of your choosing, most commonly Zoho Analytics or Zoho CRM. Now, the last one I do want to highlight, because I think this one's really cool, is essentially building like a cycle, a cleanup cycle here using DataPrep. So this is basically an example where maybe we have messy data in a Zoho app, right? Maybe your CRM leads list is a bit messy. Maybe you got bad phone number formatting, whatever it may be. You can route that data into DataPrep and then clean it up there and export it right back to that same Zoho app that it just came from, right? So you can kind of set up this loop where data will be continuously cleansed and adjusted over a period of time on a regular basis. And so just to summarize, those are kind of the big three, right? That kind of as needed data cleanup, building a data pipeline, kind of a through line flow from some non-Zoho apps into the Zoho environment, or lastly, cyclical cleanup just to keep your existing data inside of Zoho clean and manageable. With that, let us jump right on over to DataPrep and actually show how to get data into the system. Alrighty, so here we are inside of Zoho DataPrep. We're in a fresh workspace here, so we don't have any data synced in just yet. So let's go ahead and get started by adding that data. So up here in the top right, under Add Dataset is where we're going to go. I'm going to click on this option. We'll spend a little time here. I'll just give you an overview of what we're seeing on this page. Essentially, what this is are all of the different places that we can pull data from and directly sync it into Zoho DataPrep. Right, so up here at the top left is files, right? That's going to be the one where we have something local, kind of that idea of like an ad hoc cleanup. We've got a ton of different options for more cloud-based connectors, right? So things like Zoho Work Drive and Google Drive, if you have cloud files, same with OneDrive here. We're able to connect to a variety of different web service providers. So whether it's AWS, an Access database, Microsoft Azure, Google Cloud, Snowflake, Oracle, IBM, etc. Right, so a variety of different cloud service providers. And then last but not least, down here at the bottom, we do have Zoho Analytics, CRM, and Zoho Creator, right? And so that's kind of that use case of maybe building a cycle, right? Where we're going to pull data in, we're going to clean it up and transform it, and then we're going to push it back out to those other applications. I'm going to go through two examples of setting up a connector or a sync from a file, and then also setting up one that will come from Zoho CRM. I have just like a dummy file here pulled up. Yes, I am a psycho and I use numbers instead of Excel on my local device. I don't use it a lot, I promise, but yes, judge me, I get it. I do the same. I've just got a quick little file here that has some common data issues, right? So phone numbers without formatting and addresses all in one column. So let's say I see that file and I'm like, that's not going to work inside my CRM. I can add this data source, upload my lead list here. Sometimes this will take a little bit of time. I will say DataPrep is not always the snappiest tool. In my case, I just have 2 rows. I'm kind of cheating here. It's not a lot of data, so it shouldn't take us much time to get this pulled up. So before we jump into actually working with data inside of DataPrep, I do want to show one more thing about importing data, which is how I would do it for a cloud-based data set. So I can just click on that Add Dataset button again, and this time we're going to pull from the CRM, so just down there in the bottom left. We'll choose our organization. We can choose if we want to have a particular date period of data or just all data for all time. We can select one or multiple different modules. So maybe I want to pull like contacts, accounts, and deals. And I can go ahead and import those. Just like that, right now, it's basically in the process of uploading all of that data. By default, when you do this, it's going to grab all of the columns for each of those modules. So we're just going to give this a minute to run that upload in the background, and then we'll jump back in and take a look at the finished product. Alrighty, so with that data pulled in, we can see each of those data sets have now been added. It does do a quick analysis on some of the data quality, just in case you want to kind of focus in on some of the problem areas when you're in here. Again, we're going to focus on this example lead list and do a couple cleanup items there and then export that to CRM. But I did just want to show how quick and easy it is to actually apply or sync any of the data from your chosen applications. So with that, we'll go ahead and jump on into the example lead list and get started on some cleanup there. What you'll see when you add any new data set is that it's going to give you an initial review around some of the quality and consistency of that data, right? So it'll tell you if you're missing things, if you have invalid data, right? It'll give you an overview of a lot of common data issues. Over here on the left is where we're actually going to see the data itself. It's going to do some assumptions when you pull it in, right? So it's going to say what type of data does it think that this is, and you can hover over each of these little icons to see exactly what it thinks. And from here, what we'll essentially need to do is go through each of these columns and determine what type of cleanup activities we want to push based on the data that we're seeing. We do see the one main thing that we're going to want to clean up. So in some cases, people might want to adjust the phone number formatting and insert, parentheses and dashes. I actually think for most applications, it's better to keep it as the raw data. So we're going to focus in instead on this address and get that split out into the appropriate format for the CRM. So if we jump over here and we look at like an example lead, we can see everything is split out into street, city, state, zip, etc. And that is not how it currently lives in our sheet. So what are we going to do? We're going to select this column. We're going to go over to the right, and we're going to take a look at some of the suggestions that it has for cleaning this up. Adding a prefix or a suffix, this would just be if you want to put something at the beginning or the end. Replacing would be like looking for certain key parameters and swapping them out. Trimming white space is almost always a good idea. We will come back and apply that. You can split an address, which is definitely what we're going to do here in just a moment. You can change the case, so if you wanted proper case, you could also delete it or duplicate it. An important thing to know about these data operations is that they stack with one another. So it's okay to actually add more than one onto a particular column. So what I'll do here is I'll first just do this trim white space. I almost always apply that to data sets because you just never know. You're not going to notice if there's a little space after the zip code. Then you import it in your system, and technically there's this little space in there. 9 times out of 10, not going to matter. But maybe you do some integration in the future where based on a zip code, you're pinging some API, yada, yada, yada. These are just little things that can actually throw some issues in the long term as you work in the system. We'll go ahead and just trim that white space. We're not going to see a big difference here. I already know that. I entered this data. There aren't any white spaces, but it never hurts just to run that operation. What we'll see is in the top right here, it's going to actually save all of those steps that we've done as a rule set. And this is how you create a repeatable process, right? It's automatically saving all of this as something that can be applied in the future. So now that we've done that quick little trim, let's actually get into splitting this out. And the way that we're going to split this is based on a delimiter. Some of the other ways that you could do this are a start and end index. That is like a number of characters that we want to split based on. We could also do a start index and a length. What that would basically be is starting at spot 5 and going for 10, right? So start and end is normally used for like the beginning chunk, and then index and length would be used for the remaining. Regex is using kind of a script approach to do this. Makes my head hurt, so we're not going to spend a lot of time on regex here. And then white spaces would just be every single space, right, gets a split. Now, when we're doing address splits, we're generally going to do them with a combo of 2 techniques. One will be a delimiter on a comma, and then we'll do another delimiter on a space. Here, I've selected delimiter. We'll need to give it the pattern, basically teach it how we want it to know when it should do a split. So I'll do a single quote and a comma. And we'll see right away, it's showing us the output here. It's split it into 2 sections. Now you may be thinking, well, Tyler, there's another comma right here. Why is it not grabbing that? The reason is under the advanced options, we have a number of matches that we need to set. So if I bump this up to 3, now we'll see that it's split out the street, the city, and the state and zip code in this remaining column. Now, in our case here, this is going to be where we're going to stop on the first round of delimiters because we don't have any more commas to work with, right? So let's go ahead and apply this. So now we have this split out into 3 different columns. Next, we do see they try to highlight these little dots. Those are spaces, right? And so we don't like spaces, not at the beginning and at the end. So we're going to grab our columns that we've just created. and add the trim white space. And so all this is going to be is just a quick little leading and trailing white space removal, and we'll go ahead and apply that. Again, keep in mind, each of these things that we've done are being saved, right? So you might find occasionally in DataPrep, it's like, wow, I got to stack all these rules. How am I going to remember this next time I come in and want to clean up the same data? Well, you don't have to remember it. It's going to do that for you. So now the last thing we need to do is come back into this final split and split it one more time. This time, though, we're going to base it on a space. So let's go ahead and apply that. And now we have everything split out for us just how we would like it. One thing I do always recommend is try to make sure that as we're going, we're renaming columns and keeping things clean. It's really easy, even though you feel like, oh, it's really obvious, I'm going to remember what all these are. You might not. So always a good habit to just apply all of these column namings by just clicking right click and going under this rename section. So I'm going to go ahead and knock that out here, and then we'll be right back. All right, so with our columns renamed, we are almost ready to actually run the export here. Before we do, I will just highlight a few little kind of options in here and where to find certain workflows and functions. So if I right click up here at the top of the column header, this is where you get kind of the full list of things that can be done for a particular piece of data. When I click on it and it shows them over here in the top right, these are really just suggestions, right? These are things that a lot of the times you're going to want to do, but that maybe might not be perfect for what you're looking for. All of those options are going to live here under this right click menu on the top of the column, and this will give you that full list. So imagine I want to change the case. A really common one is do a proper case, right? We could do a title case on first and last, right? A lot of these common things. All of those are going to be under that top menu as we click on the top of the column header. So I'll just go ahead and apply that while I'm in here. Make sure that everything is proper cased, just because, hey, if you're going to send an email and you're going to include those names, we want to make sure that those are good to go. Lastly, just again, as a reminder, everything is saved here under the rule set. And if we want to save this as a template, we can do so right here. So we'll go ahead and just do that. Call this our lead processing template. And we'll save that. So now that we have this data all cleaned up, how would we actually go about getting it into CRM? So up here in the top right, we have this export button. And so that's where we're going to start. We're going to click on an export. Now we could do an export now or a schedule export. I'm going to do a schedule. It technically doesn't make sense for this data because it's a one-time thing. And it'll tell me that, I'm sure, as I go through it. We're going to set it up that way anyways, just so I can show you those steps. Again, it's warning us. It's saying hey, this is pointless. Why are you scheduling this? It's a raw data file. I know DataPrep. I just want to show the viewers here. So when we're scheduling, we're basically going to determine how often we want to do this, either based on number of hours or based on number of days, weeks, or months. I'm just going to do mine at the most common and frequent setup, so every 1 hour. I'll click on next. Now I need to choose an output destination. And so in our case, again, we could send it anywhere, but we're going to send it to Zoho CRM. My account has a little bug in my demo here, so it's going to throw a little error saying it's confused about where I'm trying to go with this. That is all good. The one thing that this error is throwing for me, and I'm not able to do anything to fix it right now, is that it will not let me export these to leads. So we're just going to send them over to contacts. It's the same process. This error is unique to my demo account, so don't worry about it when you get to this step. But it's all the same fields, so we're going to send them here. One of the big choices that we're going to make as we send data to CRM is how do we want it to process the existing data? So do we only want to add new records? Do we want to update existing, or maybe add or update based on the data that's there? Now, I know off the top of my head that both of these emails do not exist in my CRM demo account. So we're going to do an add or update. Important to note that this is going to change your CRM data. So if you've made an error inside of DataPrep, it's going to send that error right over into the CRM. So just make sure that you're very confident about the cleanup that you've done before you actually push this live. Now, we will need to choose what field we want to use to match on. So in our case, we're going to use email. That's always a good one. Now, this last little checkbox, this is checked by default. leave it checked 99% of the time. What this means is it's basically saying, if this is unchecked and a field in your DataPrep data is empty, it will overwrite whatever you have in CRM with an empty value. So you only ever want this unchecked if your data in CRM is really bad. And you're like, hey, the only thing I can trust is what's in my DataPrep data. Whatever is in my CRM is nonsense, and I need to get rid of all of it and reset things. I'm not in that situation, so I'm going to leave this checked. You're probably not in that situation, so you should probably also leave this box checked. So with our options confirmed here, we're going to go ahead and click Next. What it's going to do in the background now is basically look at the data that we have versus where we want it to go, and it's going to check for any potential issues. So here we can see it has found a couple issues. Let's take a look at what those are. Now, I always like to uncheck this show only errors box because I like to see everything that I have. So I can see that basically it's saying first and last. It doesn't know where it's supposed to put those. It doesn't see anything inside a CRM that matches those perfectly. We're also seeing that it's a bit confused on a couple of the data formats and namings. So here under the email, this is kind of a funky one, but phone, it says, it's not seeing a data type match. So we've got a number field in our system and a text field inside a CRM. For some of these others, it's just not seeing a column in our target data set. So like maybe these addresses are named a little differently on the CRM side. Email is a funky one because it's actually considered an email in both systems. So all it's really warning us on here is that technically the column in DataPrep will allow a longer parameter than inside of CRM. So hypothetically, if somebody had an insanely long email address, DataPrep would accept it, but it would fail when it tries to go over to the CRM. All we'll need to do is click on Fix Errors, and we'll need to go through a couple quick steps here to basically make sure that everything in our target destination is ready to prep. So we'll click Got It. Target matching may help us here, and we may be able to use it in some cases, but we're going to go through on each of these and just get things lined up. What I'm going to do is work left to right in the columns that I have. That's kind of what works best in my head as I go through to map these. So a couple things I see here that are a little weird. So over here on the left under last, it doesn't know what to do with this. And so if I go over here and I try to map it to this last name field, it's not there, right? For whatever reason, you will see some weirdness in DataPrep. These ones, it identifies and it wants us to manually map them. These ones, it doesn't identify anything, it doesn't think they're important, and it's confused. So what I'll do is I'll come into my last column and I'll rename it to last name. What's probably happening here is that the little AI tool on the back end doesn't identify that last name, or that last probably refers to last name. And so I need to rename them so that it will potentially let me map those fields to the appropriate place inside of the CRM. So now with these renamed, these turn from gray to red, which means I can do something with them. And I'll go ahead and map them to the appropriate CRM columns. Do the same thing here with our last name. So now we're good here. We've got these two. Still got some yellow, actually, now that I see this a little closer. So what it's doing is, again, it just doesn't see a character limit cap on the column data in DataPrep. And so just by clicking this, it knows what to do. It's just setting a cap, right, on how long this data field can be. Lastly here, column is mandatory in CRM, so we got to make that mandatory. Really a big part of target matching is just clicking on each of these. It's really just basically telling you things that it needs to be to go into where you want it to go. And so by clicking it, it's just reformatting everything accordingly. Here under street name, we'll just need to map this. We can choose between either like the billing or the mailing street. In our case, we're just going to go to mailing for all of these. And so one by one, we'll just click through and get them mapped. And with those mapped, we just need to make sure, again, that we're applying that size limit. All right, and now with everything mapped and renamed and limited in terms of size, we now have the green across the board. This is what we want. This is what makes us happy. with that, we actually have everything basically mapped up here inside of the file. And with all of these targets mapped, we are good. You can always hide these targets as well. So if you don't really want to see them every single time that you access the system to do any little reviews or imports, you can just hide those. If you ever want to see them, they'll come up under this target matching. Now, one last thing, I know I've highlighted a couple times, but everything I just did there, the renaming, the lining up, the constraining the length, all of that stuff is saved in that rule set. So again, maybe I want to save it as a template with export to CRM. And eventually I'll just get rid of that old template, right? You're going to be creating and removing templates pretty often as your needs may change in the system over time. So last thing we need to do with all those target issues now resolved, we can just come in and schedule that export. So I'm going to knock that out real quick behind the scenes, and then we'll jump in once it's done and we'll take a look at the CRM. All right, so this time target match check has been passed. We got that beautiful little green check mark. We'll go ahead and click export, and now that has started. So we can close this panel out and everything will be done. Actually, even better, it just finished. Again, we're cheating here. We only have 2 rows. So it does not take very long for these things to run when we're actually importing or exporting data. So now let's actually go over to CRM and take a look at those newly created records. Alrighty, and just like that, we now have these 2 new contacts that have been created based on that export, our first and second examples. If we go ahead and open up first example here, we will see that all of that address information came in, dropped itself in the appropriate place. Nice thing with CRM is when you keep your phone numbers clean like this, it will do the nice text formatting wrapping for you, and you don't need to worry about that. So with that, the next section we're going to do is just a quick overview of the settings on the back end before we wrap up the webinar for today. All right, so last step here before we wrap up for today, I do just want to dive into the settings menu and show a couple things here before we close out. So we'll just run down this left-hand category or side and make sure that all of these have been covered. So under the top one, this is basically your managed subscription. This is the top down on all of the usage statistics in the app, right? So everything from the number of rows that you've processed against your limit, the total storage, the user count, any data sets or batch sizing limits that are relevant for you. Organization settings, this is really like name and logo, right? Not a lot to do in here. But this is where you go if you ever need to change that super admin for the org. Maybe you wanted to put your own logo in here. Pretty minor. Organization admins. Now, I don't have one because I only have one user and they're the full account admin. An organization admin is basically just somebody who can access anything that's in here, do any management steps, essentially equivalent to the account admin, just without access to all the billing information. Users and groups. So if you did want to have particular user bases in here or groups of users, you can add them. The use case for something like a group might be if you had like a marketing team versus a finance team, and both of them are going to be using DataPrep for different use cases. You may want to group them up so that they don't all have access to each other's data and vice versa, right? Like maybe it's okay for the finance team to see marketing data, but the marketing team does not need to see all of our financial information. And so our data catalog options, this is really just a control on like what types of things should be able to schedule exports or share with particular consumers of data. Ready to use is basically just a little demarcation that you can put on a piece of data over here on the left with this little thumb. So if I mark something as ready to use, basically that would just allow in these settings for certain people to access, export, right, interact with that data. Clearing processing history, this is just an admin thing. If you want to clear any of the history in the app, you can do that here. Our schedules are going to show all of our scheduled imports and exports, right? So this is kind of nice just as a holistic view of everything coming in and out of the application. Data bridges are used to connect your DataPrep application to like local servers or internal applications, right? So that Microsoft Access database running on a server in the basement, data bridge is how you get there because they don't have an available API. This is actually something that you install on that device and it services that connector so that you can get the data out. Managed privacy is really just where we can select certain things about how exports work. So in this case, option number 1 here is around any of the personal data. Option number 2 is if we want to make sure that anybody who's exporting has to put a password on the exported file. More applicable if you're exporting to like a CSV, not if you're exporting to another Zoho application. And then here we can make sure and check in on any of the sections that might have some personal data in them. Custom data type, this is just if you have added any custom data types to a workspace, those will show up here. DataPrep does have a really robust Open API or OpenAI integration over for ChatGPT. And so you can just drop your org ID and your API key here and get going. This will give you 3 main options. So 1, finding data. It will actually go out and maybe generate some sample data for you. It can also generate formulas for you. A big one here is like those regex formulas that I mentioned earlier. Great for data cleanup, really annoying to configure and learn. And then transform by example is a great one. So this is where like you could give it a reference database of phone numbers and then have it clean up phone numbers by comparing it to what you'd like the outcome to look like. Compliance settings, this is where you're going to find primarily HIPAA related or personal information related settings. So if you enable the HIPAA tracking, it's going to make this request. This does need to run through Zoho so that we can get a BAA done on Zoho's side, but it does have a full suite of compliance options for HIPAA data. And then lastly, we're able to decide if we want to access or track activity audits. So I normally would turn these on. I like to have audit functionality. Maybe something happened that went wrong in here. It's always just good to know, who needs a little bit of additional training on the application. So with that, we have actually covered everything here for today on Zoho DataPrep. Again, if you found this video useful, please be sure to like and subscribe down below. That really does help us out and make sure that we're making content that you guys are enjoying. If it sparks any questions, feedback, or additional video requests, please leave those in the comment section down below the like button, as we do try to read through each and every one of those on a weekly basis. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.